Hi folks, it's Jim here to talk about how to hold a trumpet. This is going to be a quick lesson, so pay attention. Your hand wants to work like this. That's where the trumpet goes. How that really looks in my case is I've got my ring finger through this ring. My pinky is floating around. It could be underneath, it could be in there. Two fingers grabbing the valve cluster. My thumb is on the other side in this nice little saddle that this trumpet has. Ring finger in the ring. Chances are good that your third valve ring, like this one, is adjustable. So you could loosen this screw here and adjust the position of the ring so that it's comfortable for your hand. I strongly recommend that you put your ring finger in there. If you got big hands and you really want to put your middle finger in there, then bring it a little closer and do that. The reason the placement here is important is that you do, as you're playing, have to be able to move that slide out and back in again. If your slide doesn't move at all, you might need to get it to a repair shop. If, like this one, it's difficult to move, then you can probably solve that problem on your own. I think I go through that on my 5 things to do in daily maintenance lesson on my website. So this one's not in great shape, but it's adjustable, probably like yours, so that's why we're using it right now. There is another little keeper screw down here, by the way. This little keeper screw is just to keep that thing from falling out once you get it sliding really well. Let's get back to the business of how to hold it. My thumb is in this saddle. Some trumpets don't have that saddle. It's no big deal. 100 years ago, nobody had that saddle. So just, if that wasn't there, you would just be grabbing the valve. But if you have a saddle there, put your thumb in it in a way that you could potentially move it if you had to. I tend to move mine, some people don't. The right hand is all about playing valves. That's really all it does. It kind of balances the instrument, helps keep it steady, helps you keep it up. If you're not very strong and you find your instrument drooping like this, maybe it can help you a little bit. I like to get my thumb right underneath the lead pipe, in between the first 2 valves. That way I've got a really strong anchor point for it. Some people will put it against the first valve. Really it has to do with what's comfortable for your hand. Your hand should essentially be in a relaxed gripping position as though you were holding a tennis ball or something like that. All right? That way you can take full advantage of all your knuckles. The tips of your fingers, we're not playing down on it like this. We're playing it with the pads of our fingers, almost as though it was a clarinet and was going to leak air, or a flute, if we didn't cover the instrument with the soft pad. Okay, so soft pads of your finger. And the other thing to try to do is make sure your fingers aren't all crammed together like this. They should be nicely spaced. You want to be pushing these valves straight down. I cannot count the number of times I've had students with issues, sticky valves. My valves are sticky, my valves won't come up, only to find that they were pushing them down at an angle. Well, look what happens. If you push them down, oh, of course this one won't do it. There. If you push them down at an angle, they want to come up at an angle, and it's just not going to work. Push them straight down. So to do that, anchor your thumb, get some spacing in there. So the next thing, I suppose, is to think about getting the instrument up. Now if you're in a marching band, you've already been told that you need to have that thing horizontal to the ground. In actual practice, I and most other professional trumpet players are probably down a little bit from horizontal. Sometimes we'll hide into our music stand if we want to use it as a mute. We won't get too close, but we'll get in there. But basically, somewhere near horizontal, I can usually see over my bell. If you're sitting, it looks exactly the same. It's just that you're sitting. Nothing changes. If you're left-handed, good for you. You're going to be holding your instrument extra well because of all that dexterity in your left hand. Do not try to play this instrument backwards. Unless there's something really unusual about your anatomy, hold it with your left hand, play the valves with your right. A big part of that is this business of using, I'm going to get back to this other one. I know the slides work on this instrument. The business of using that third valve slide and even the first valve slide, you can see that going out. When I played that little example of either God Save the Queen or America, the second note was a D. Do you see how far out that third valve slide is? If you're not playing D with your third valve slide out, you're playing it wrong. It is so sharp that it's awful. If you're playing along with anybody else, you'll hear it because it'll just sound wrong. Here it is right. I'll put it out there. I can just leave it out for this tune. Now I'll pull it in and you'll see how awful it sounds. That should leave you cringing. Imagine that times, say, 10 in your beginning band, and all the clarinets and flutes and everybody else, they're all dutifully playing it in tune and you're not. So let's fix it and make it part of the fingering. You want this to be automatic. That's an aside. I think, again, that's probably in lesson 1 or in one of my scale exercises. It's definitely on my fingering chart. If you're looking at this for the first time and you already have a fingering chart and it claims that the fingering for D is 1 and 3 without any mention of that slide, you need a new fingering chart. Okay, we have dealt with left-handedness. Good for you. Like I said, you'll just be that much more dexterous at getting these things in the right place. Pushing three valves down is not a big deal. This pinky, you'll notice my pinky is flying. It's connected up to this other finger too closely. If you lock that in, this finger suddenly becomes quite sluggish and less available to you. There is also the potential that you could use this pinky ring to pull the horn hard onto your teeth. They're not made for that. We want to play this instrument in a balanced way with very little pressure, and all that's going to do is hurt. So keep your pinky out of there. If you have to turn pages in your book, if you have to wave at the adoring crowd, if you need to put a mute in, for instance, you might have to use that pinky ring. If you want to be cool and stand in the front of the band and go like this, like your band teacher, that's great. But when you're playing, out it comes. Okay? Keep it out. A couple of oddball things. If you don't have one of these rings on your trumpet, you probably have a place to put one. You might be missing the ring itself, and you can get these at a music shop. They do come in different sizes. If you have an older trumpet, they're often a little thicker. Newer trumpets, they're usually a little thinner. You will probably also need a screw. Some band teachers have little collections of these screws, like me. But your music shop should have them. And the repair shop, often at the back of your music shop, but not always, they should either have one or be able to get one for you. I wouldn't try substituting just any old screw. I have had luck, believe it or not, with the clarinet ligature screw in an emergency, but that's an emergency. If it did occur to me that if you have some other kind of a mechanism there that's spring-loaded, like a trigger that has a spring and is actuated on a lever, that's a different setup, but the principle is the same. Get yourself so that you're holding the instrument comfortably in a way that you could hold it for hours, and then just use that trigger in the same way. This old trumpet, this one here, I had to make this out of, I used one of these rings. I used one of these and just cut it off, filed it down, and had a jeweler solder it on for me because I didn't have access to a real repair person at that time. You can see the posts mounted on it. There was one there, and there was a trigger that came out to here. So you pushed in like this, and the thing shot out. And the same here. It was mounted there, and you pulled the ring in, and it shot out like that. If you have a setup like that, that's great. Just make sure that it works in a way that doesn't disturb the horn as you're playing. That's why, for instance, we want these slides to work really well, because you don't want the instrument shaking around while you're trying to move these slides in and out, or you'll just stop moving them and you'll play out of tune, which is no good. All right, thanks.